Hello, I'm Taylor Wedderburn, and today I'll be giving a teaser of my senior thesis. My original question was, what is more reliable, emotion or reason? I chose this because I knew I wanted to work with the abolition of man, and I wanted that to be my main text because it argued that there was a path that could be very beneficial to both a person and society at large. Lewis claimed that we can find this path, which he termed the Tao, through the use of our reason and some emotion. So as I began to reread the book, in addition to my original question started to formulate into the one I'm sticking with now. What is more reliable, emotion or reason? When do we rely on one versus the other, which is my sub-question. Then I was recommended The Coddling of the American Mind as my second source. As I read through that, more questions started to form. Which is more dangerous, so-called reason or emotion? The untruth of emotional reasoning that is described in the book tells the reader and gives empirical evidence of the fact that our emotions should not be heavily relied on, lest they make us insular and significantly less willing to hear the opinion of others that disagree with ours. Ultimately, this would prevent us from growing as individuals. Another book that I personally introduced into my paper was Mastermind by Maria Konnikova. In the book, she has similar reasoning for why we shouldn't be too reliant on emotions. Due to the fact that our emotions cloud judgment and gives psychological evidence to support that fact. Yes, she does still advocate for the importance of reasoning and training our minds to be more rational so that we don't jump to conclusions about people or our situations. Aristotle, the textbook example of ancient philosophical wisdom, would agree with this as well in his Nicomachean Ethics, and supports the idea of moderating and regulating emotions through the utilization of reason. So it seems that the best relationship between emotion and reason is one that will benefit not only the individual, but also society, which is what I'm arguing. I'm seeking to understand why people use reason so much for one situation and so little for the next. The same with emotion. It seems to me that we are always jumping from one extreme to the next, rather too emotional or too reasonable, which is a bad thing, because that makes us ultimately less humane, with no sort of moderation. What shocks me the most is that ancient philosophers, as well as the modern ones, caution people to have moderation, and yet it still doesn't work. Why is that? Why do we continue to do this when the effects are so disastrous? I want to emphasize that the right dose, a tad bit more reason than emotion, is the best way to lead a happy life for yourself and those around you. As I briefly mentioned earlier, the books I will mainly use are The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis, Mastermind by Maria Konnikova, The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, Plato's Republic, and tiny excerpts from two other books. The authors are more or less say the same thing about the issue, which is emotion and reasoning, which is what surprised me, but they all have different ways of getting to the same conclusion. For instance, Konnikova uses psychology, while C.S. Lewis uses theology and Plato uses philosophy. Not to give away too much information, but I learned people struggle with a lot of different problems, such as social and psychological ones. So this journey that I'm arguing is the right one to take isn't necessarily an easy one, or as easy as I would have liked it to be. My thesis statement is, emotion and reason usually manifests itself at the expense of the other, but through exploring the strengths and weaknesses of both, we will see that a harmonious relationship between the two is the best concoction that will benefit not only the individual, but also society. When I say manifest itself at the expense of the other, I mean what I mentioned earlier, that we're either too emotional or too reasonable. So I want to explore the good and the bad of these two real and integral components of humanity so that we can understand how to control ourselves to the benefit of everyone else.